Welcome back to 4RGMeets. And my name is Scott McKinley, and sitting beside me is my wife and co-host, Beth McKinley. I hope you all had a great summer as we did. And we're so happy to have you all back here for another season, showing your commitment to learning about and taking action in climate solutions and climate justice. Despite the lack of meetings through the summer, there's been still lots going on, and tonight, with the help of Marilyn Freeman, we're going to take a look at what the Political Action Committee has been up to over the last few months. But at this point, I am going to turn it over to Beth.
Okay, many 4RG members, but not all of us, live in or near Peterborough, land traditionally known as Nogo-Jiwanong. It's found on the traditional lands of the Mississauga and the Chippewa nations in an area covered by the Williams Treaties. You may know that 80% of global biodiversity is found on Indigenous lands. I'm going to put a link in the chat about federal government spending, which you may or may not have seen over the past few months. And it outlines how they're donating. Did they ever donate to federal government? How they're donating our tax dollars. How the government is directing $12.8 million to Indigenous-led climate solutions that are nature-based. So I'm grateful for the work that's being done by many Indigenous people. And I say miigwech. So if you're new here, we are a climate action group, as I said, based in Peterborough, Nogo-Jiwanong. And our goal is really to answer a question that we often hear when people say, you know, I care about this. I don't know what to do. What can I do? And so 4RG, our work is to give information and help people find where they can get connected. And that is the whole focus of this evening's presentation. We're going to hear about a 12 pack of 12 actions undertaken by the Political Action Committee. And you can learn more about all of this by checking out the links that I will put in the chat to our website, our newsletter. We have a Facebook page and a group, Instagram and Twitter. And if you're inspired to lend us a hand, reach out to the link I'll put into the chat to volunteer, and you'll be connected with one of our members who, Connie McCracken, will chat with you for as long as you want to help you find a place where your skills and interests align with what we're doing. All right, Scott.
So just what has 4RG been up to in the past few months? The Political Action Committee has been doing lots of things, and we'll be hearing from a number of the Political Action Committee members tonight. And our ringmaster for tonight's main attraction will be one of our very own. Please direct your attention to the center ring for our go-getter marvel of motivation, the one, the only, Marilyn Freeman.
And tonight I come with a whip that I will crack, also known as a shoelace. So hello, everybody. Welcome to PAC's three-ring circus. And I call this a three-ring circus because at any given moment, there is so much going on in this committee. Tonight, we have to run a tight show due to time restrictions, so let's get going. First up on the City Hall beat with PAC's illustrious process nerd, Mark Bullock. Mark, take it away.
I think a logical place to start, which is the 2022 municipal elections. At that time, PAC put together a report card on the on sitting members of Peterborough City Council, those who are running for re-election anyway. And I should mention that one of the people who did a lot of work on that is not a PAC member, but he's here tonight, Lee Castiglione. Lee was one of the lead people actually putting together that report card. We also did a survey of all candidates in Peterborough City and County, sent it out, compiled the results, and put them on the website so that people could go on and see the answers that candidates made to various questions about climate. And in order to encourage people to do that, we distributed handbills around town to various neighborhoods, and possibly some of you here volunteered to help do that. And each time we distributed a new wave of those handbills, we got a little bit more traffic on the website. So it showed that No, there was a certain amount of interest from the public in getting information about this. Following the elections, we made a point of meeting with as many of the successful candidates as possible from the city and county. And one of those meetings was particularly consequential in that we met, it was actually, sorry, Carolyn Tennant, and one other person whose name I've forgotten right now, who met with Alex Burke and Joy LaChica and had a very good conversation. They're the town ward counselors. And they made a suggestion that if we wanted to influence council, we should start attending council meetings. So we decided to sort of put in place a process for that. We started putting together reports on the agenda for each council meeting as it came up, and trying to arrange to get people out to go to the meetings. So since last summer, we've been monitoring city council meetings, and we've had someone at pretty well every meeting, just following what's going on. Now, just very broadly, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I know time is limited, but I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of things that city council deals with that are relevant to climate change. And I think they fall into basically three broad categories. The first category is land use planning and transportation planning, which really run together to a large extent. And in its official plan, the city has committed to creating walkable, cyclable, transit-friendly, mixed-use, complete communities. And that's the kind of community that would emit far less carbon than a conventional suburban community, auto-dependent suburban community. And Peterborough has committed itself, I'm supposed to move along. Peterborough has committed itself to, to building that kind of community. And so we're always monitoring what's happening in that area. Another thing is electrification. How quickly is the city electrifying its vehicle fleets? How much renewable electricity is it generating? How much is it encouraging people to, electrify their homes with heat pumps or drive electric cars, that sort of thing? And the final thing is sort of whatever the city is putting out on its general climate change plans, its progress on emissions cuts and that sort of thing. We try to influence what council's is doing, obviously. We contact councilors by email, by telephone, we go in person and make presentations at council meetings. And we also we add to the website a place where our 4RG members and other visitors to the Met website can find out about issues that they can contact council about. There have been some key climate votes. We try to keep track of those. If there's a division on council on a key issue, we try to indicate who's voted which way. One of those, it hit the newspapers, was the vote on the electric wastewater truck. That went against us, unfortunately. We took names on that one. The divided vote against, there was a vote on resurfacing, delaying the resurfacing of a section of Park Hill Road so that it could be made more friendly for cyclists and pedestrians. That one also lost. We took names there as well. And then there was a vote on Bill 165. I won't go into the details on that. It had to do with Enbridge Gas and the provincial government overturning a National Energy Board, Provincial Energy Board decision. That vote did go our way. And again, we kept track of who was on side.
We'll have to leave it there. We need to move
Okay.
on because of time, but it gives people an idea of the breadth of just this one section of the Political Action Committee. Next up, number 2 is an update on actual face-to-face meetups with councillors and staff. And this is a 2-person act. First up is Don Coppin.
I'm going to discuss my views of council after being involved in interviewing Keith Reel, Gary Baldwin, Matt Crowley, and Mayor Leo. And I've also sat in on a number of council meetings. These views do not include Joy LaChica and Eric Birk, which Carolyn will discuss shortly. Keith and Gary seem genuinely concerned and informed on climate change. However, it was not something that the people that they talked to while campaigning were concerned about in the minds of the councillors. They felt that it was important to their constituency, but that roads, homelessness, and cleaning up downtown were by far more important to their constituents. Climate change comes after other financial obligations, and we've seen that in the voting at council. We discussed that climate change is going to cost the city a lot if it continues to get worse, but they did not feel that the actions of Peterborough would have any effect on climate disasters or climate change in general. Matt Crowley is a technical guy and drives an EV. He was very receptive to our conversation, and I believe he is concerned about climate change and is open to listening to our views. He then has to decide if the action is in the best interest of the city as a whole. Climate change is important, but so are many other issues that the city has to deal with, and usually the vote goes in favor of not spending any money. I felt that Mayor Leo told us basically what he thought we wanted to hear, and he had no real interest in making climate change a priority for council. All of what I've said, I believe, is the view of most of council, except for the councilors that Carolyn is going to talk about. And I believe my time is up. And Carolyn, I turn it over to you.
That's right. Mel and I met, Mel, a PAC member, and I met with Joy LaChica and Alex Burke almost 2 years ago now for they're the councilors for Town Ward about our climate concerns. And they were really open to talking about it and very supportive of any initiatives around the climate crisis. And they suggested being a more consistent presence at City Hall in the meetings. And as Marcus said, and Marcus done the heavy lifting on being there for that city council beat. They suggested contacting and spending more time with some of the councilors who are city councilors that are really more receptive to ideas, and they identified the ones they felt were somewhat receptive and the others that were just antagonistic to any perspectives around climate or the environment. It was kind of hard to hear that, but anyway, I felt really good talking to them because as I live in the neighborhood, it made me feel more comfortable now when I communicate with them. So I mean, one thing that's good to know too is to know your councilors, whether they're in the city or outside the city, and be in touch with them, and at least they know what your concerns are. I did feel bad in that both Joy and Alex they get a lot of the progressive concerns directed their way. So they're very, they're very busy and tired from being the ones that, and everyone turns to because they know they'll have a receptive ear. And made me think that it's important for citizens who care to bear some of that and get involved in their own ways. And a suggestion Joy had made is that perhaps some of the people in 4RG should consider running for council or getting involved in a committee, and getting involved in the action, more involved in the action in the community through the city, whatever city events you can.
Thank you, Carolyn. Some good ideas in there. Next up is events. And events play a big role in 4RG, and PAC people seem to be involved in most of these events too. So let's start with the Electric Car Day with Robert Lockhart.
My job was to help lead the Peterborough's not first electric vehicle car show, but certainly there hasn't been one in about 5 years. And so we organized it for August the 17th, and it was at the Memorial Center parking lot at the same time as the Peterborough Farmers Market. The event was a partnership with 4RG and the Electric Vehicle Society of the local chapter. The city of Peterborough and Selwyn Township were partners in it and providing in-kind services and financial help. All members of the Electric Vehicle Society, the local branch, were invited to bring their vehicles, and anyone else who wanted to, including a couple of 4RG members who have vehicles, they were there as well. We invited the auto dealers, and only one of them attended, even though there was a fair bit of interest when we talked to them initially. Now, the weather forecast for the day was for rain, and I think that deterred some of our members from attending, and certainly some of the auto dealers. But having said that, we still had a reasonably good turnout, and the city of Peterborough was there very strongly, brought one of their vehicles, one of their 3 electric vehicles, and a number of other items, including a battery-powered lawnmower and snowblower. And James Byrne, who was the city sustainability coordinator, was there with great enthusiasm and helped a great deal in organizing the event as well. The city and the township, Selman Township, helped to promote it. And Czechs Television interviewed me twice, once the night before and during the event, which helped give us a little bit of television coverage. Sadly, the only municipal politician who attended the event was Ron Black, who's the deputy. So that was unfortunate, but anyway, that's the way it goes. Trent Valley Honda was the only dealer to show up, and they had a very strong showing.
Perhaps we can come back in the question section because this isn't working, and maybe that'll be a little bit stronger later on. The next event that 4RG participated in, and a lot of people on the PAC committee participated in, was the Phone Zap Blast. Now, organizer Teresa couldn't be here tonight, so I'll summarize because I was one of the participants. 4RG hosted a Phone Zap Blast on June the 10th to educate participants on the Climate Aligned Finance Act, which is Senator Rosa Galvez's act. And then we called 3 politicians to urge them to pass this bill. The Climate Aligned Finance Act is a set of regulations that cracks down on financial sector investing in fossil fuels, which is a major issue that's holding Canada back, Canada's progress and climate action back. Politicians that targeted were Pamela Wallin, who's the chair of the Senate Banking Committee, Stephen Guilbeault, Federal Minister on Environment and Climate Change, and our very own Michelle Ferreri, our local MP. There were about 30 participants in the Phone Zap event, and by the end of the evening, all 3 politicians' voicemail boxes were full. Members of the committee who planned this event were Teresa Godden, Jenny Gleason, Richard Peachy, Jane Lobier, Sharon Hill, and Jane Wyatt. And true to its name, the Phone Zap Blast was a blast. It was so much fun to be doing this in real time while we're on a Zoom call all together and got to debrief afterwards. Everybody was on an absolute high at the end. And Teresa says, quote, "Watch for another one in the fall." So that was that one. And the next one was the Lakefield Jazz Fest. Jeff Daw, please.
Hi, everybody. So I was I volunteered to help at the 4RG table at the Jazz Festival in Lakefield. Now, this is a festival, an annual festival that takes place, of course, in Lakefield in mid-July. I'll say that it skews to an older audience. Maybe jazz isn't as popular with younger people, but it was very well attended, occurs over a couple of days. So myself and Don Coppin both took a shift at the 4RG table, which was set up in the sort of the vendor area of the festival. I won't say that we had a lot of people visiting us, but we had 4 people come out during our shift. We spoke with them about what 4RG is doing. We spoke about climate change. There mostly were older people, but we did have one young fellow who came and was quite interested. So it was interesting to speak with him. Their level of knowledge about climate change and 4RG in particular kind of varied. Most people weren't familiar with 4RG. So it was great to get out in the community and get our name out there. So I think the one lesson that I feel for us is that I think it's great to get out there, meet people in the community, get our name known, and also meet other 4RG members when we do volunteer for this. So that's my brief report on that. So I would encourage other people to also volunteer in the future.
Thank you. The next event that 4RG participated in was the Peterborough Folk Fest. Patricia Morton, this is yours.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Okay, so I'm just going to talk briefly about my experiences staffing the 4RG booth at the Peterborough Folk Music Festival on Saturday, August the 17th. So I was joined by my husband, David, and our granddaughter, Avery. And so the 3 of us were standing outside of the booth, sort of thrusting pamphlets in people's faces as they walked past. But we were pleased that so many people did stop by and talk to us about about climate change. And some of them said that they were already well aware of climate change, which was great. But then the same people said they didn't want to take a pamphlet because they didn't want to contribute to littering, which, you know, is something for us to think about. But I thought it was really interesting that virtually everybody wanted a 4RG button and our bumper stickers that say there is no planet B. And I wondered why they were so popular, albeit perhaps because I was giving them out free of charge. Because I just thought it was so important to get our message out there. So it was really fun, except then along came a man who didn't want to take anything, even free of charge. And when I asked him why, he said because he was blind. And so I stood and talked to him inside the 4RG booth for about half an hour about how we all can do something about climate change. And finally, he just came right out and said to me, "The weather has always changed and it always will, and climate change is just a big hoax." So later on, my husband said to me, "So you've just wasted your time talking to a climate change denier." And I had to agree, which is something I rarely do with my husband.
That's true, very true.
So that was a bit frustrating, but all in all, it was just a wonderful experience. I think for David and our granddaughter Avery too, just especially meeting such a diversity of people of all races, ethnicities, genders, and ages, and some just adorable young children too, who just stole my heart. And I must say, of course, that is why we at 4RG are fighting climate change so hard, because we don't want it to destroy the future of our children and grandchildren and all future generations. So let's keep on fighting.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patricia. All right, moving on. In the number 4 ring is PAC doings with the county, because we don't just do the city, we cover the county too. Robert?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll see what we can do. So I'm just going to speak about one particular thing in the county that then, in addition to trying to reach out and speak to as many politicians as we can when the opportunity presents itself, one of the things we're trying to do is test out the idea of whether there's an appetite for a full-time climate change coordinator or sustainability coordinator at the county level to supplement the work that's being done in Selwyn and hopefully in other townships in the future. So we're in the early stages of this right now, and we'll be continuing to pursue this through the fall and into the winter. It's a longer term process, and we'll see whether we can get any traction on this particular.
Thank you, Robert. Okay. PAC members have also had success in getting letters to the editor in the Examiner. Carolyn, this is yours.
Okay, well, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but a letter to the editor is simple and effective as a way to raise important issues in the community. It's the editorial pages are among the most read sections. If you're writing something to do with climate change, it's good to introduce yourself, explain how you feel about it or how you're connected to the issue of climate change, and then present something specific. It's important to respond to something particular that's written in the paper. So for example, Marilyn and I wrote letters to the editor in support of the public libraries climate initiatives. There was an article in the paper in the Examiner about it. And I thought they were good letters, and it was good to be positive. A couple of weeks ago, there was an article in the Examiner that talked about how thrilled Enbridge is connecting Bob Cajun, new and existing customers to natural gas. And there was nothing critical at all in this article, and no reference to Bill 185 and overturning the Ontario Energy Board's recommendation that gas not be added to new builds. So there was nothing about climate change in that article. It was a front page article, and that article was ripe for a letter. Now I haven't written that letter, but I should. So one suggestion that was made is ideas to emphasize in a letter, either for positive or negative responses, is that we need massive climate infrastructure investment. So I think that if I write that letter, that's what I would emphasize. Like, why not that instead of, I think, $68 million given by the Ontario government for that. And also emphasizing things like PEI having free heat pumps for those households with incomes lower than 100,000. And when I write the letters, I also send them to the city councillors and the mayor. And also, so I think that just kind of covers more. I've done the work of the letter, and why not pass it around? It is important to note that the municipal government has committed to using a climate lens for its decisions. And I think letters certainly could be written using for that with respect to specific decisions. And I think, I mean, I'm not sure, but a letter, maybe one could write a letter every month or every 3 weeks. I can't be doing it all the time, but some kind of regular way. I do notice that the Bonnerworth Park group has had 1 million letters about the pickleball development, and it's hard to say whether that will or will not be successful, but it certainly keeps the topic in the public eye. So that's the letter writing thing. I know there's been quite a few letters, and Al wrote a great letter in the Star, which talked about, greenhouse gases littering and being litter, and it was highlighted at the top of the page. So I feel like we've been in the news. We've done various things.
All right, thank you. If you've been on the 4RG website recently or at all, you'll notice the constantly updated Take Action button. Guy is the guy who handles this, but he is asking for a volunteer to take this on. He says it's super easy. You don't have to leave home to do it. And if anybody has a mind to just do this, and it's not even a regular thing, it's whenever something is happening, to post it up on that Take Action site. Anyway, he's looking for a volunteer to take over that little job. So keep that in mind. On to item 7, and item 7 involves school. And given that we're just into the second week of school, it's a very timely subject. Mark has been consulting with the Kawartha Pine Ridge School Board on climate education. Mark.
Hi. So this goes back again to the 2022 municipal elections when we elected a new school board in Peterborough at KPR. Of course, a separate board did too, but our focus has been the public board. Linda put together a letter to Steve Russell, who was then the director of the board, urging him to engage in more climate action. Particularly, we wanted, we talked about 2 areas. One was obviously the heating and transportation uses of the school board. We were encouraging them to electrify, save energy, cut their GHG emissions. And the other one was curriculum, teaching kids more about climate change. There was a bit of back and forth between Steve and Linda. We had a few other ideas. For a while, we were thinking, well, maybe we could try to approach teachers directly who might be interested in this, provide them with, offer advice, assistance, help them find resources, that sort of thing. And then we spoke to Cam Douglas, who runs the Youth Leadership and Sustainability Program for the board, and is a very, very strong advocate for climate change education, both in Peterborough and in Ontario and across the country, really. He's involved in some quite high-level efforts. And what he suggested was that we could help facilitate a meeting between him and Steve Russell to strategize about how to encourage the board, particularly the trustees, to support climate action in the board. And so we did facilitate that meeting. We had an online meeting. We met with Steve and Cam. And what that led to was another meeting at the board office with the board superintendent, who's charged with climate change matters, who has been asked to put together a climate action plan. And that too was a result of some action by Cam. He and Malika Collette, who's a 4RG member, had met with the board the previous fall and got the board to commit to a climate action plan. That would make them only the third board in the province to have a climate action plan. So we met in May. Al and Linda were there. I was there. Cam, a few other representatives from various groups in the community talking about the board's climate action plan. And what Jamie Brake, the superintendent, said was that by the end of the school year we're in now, the board should have produced a climate action plan. And he is committed to continuing to consult with community groups, bring them into the process, essentially use them as resources. And 4RG is committed to being part of that.
Thank you, Mark. We're on to item 8. 4RG does not work in isolation. We liaise with other groups such as ALLO, the Alliance for a Livable Ontario, KLT, the Kawartha Land Trust, PFN, the Peterborough Field Naturalist, SCAN, Seniors for Climate Action Now, Environmental Defense, and Kawartha World Issues on its climate mentorship program. Sometimes this looks like passing on action items and information. Sometimes it looks like joining in events others are promoting. And for one tiny example, Quick handed out 4RG's new pamphlet at Trent's Clubs and Groups Day, which was today. That's just a little taste of other things that we coordinate with other groups on. Item 9 is about lunches and dinners. So I wish it was about lunches and dinners, but it's about lunches and dinners with politicians other than local ones. So Guy, Al, and Linda were invited for dinner with Stephen Guilbeault, Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Guy sat beside him and they just chatted, not about any particular policies, but about his personal life. He sighed with frustration when Guy probed him about how difficult progress is. According to Guy, he's another human who cares very much about the same things we do. Guy was also invited to lunch with Bonnie Crombie, leader of the Ontario Liberal Party, along with other Lakefield community members. His 2 requests to her were to restore the Ontario Energy Board to its proper role, free from political interference, by repealing Bill 165, and to reverse the current government's intent to build more gas-powered electricity generation. Guy passed details on to her on paper based on previous presentations. Guy went with the Citizens Climate Lobby to Ottawa and met with Senator Rosa Galvez. He presented 4RG's phone zap on the Climate Aligned Finance Act to her. She had some suggestions about where to get information, and the CCL has taken up the phone zap idea and is moving ahead with it in October on a national level. On to Section 10, support for Climate Action Plan 2.0. Richard Peachy, on to you.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I attended a May meeting of the Seniors for Climate, which is a national organization involving about 300 communities across Canada. They suggested that we should be celebrating Seniors Climate Day, which is October 1st, as which is Seniors Day, but we should be celebrating it as Seniors Climate Day. So I contacted a number of other organizations, environmental and climate change organizations in Peterborough, Quick, Green Up, Cam Douglas from YLS, Kawartha Land Trust, and we set up a little committee called 4RG and Friends, and we have been organizing this rally. Scott, I wonder if you could put that poster up for me. So we are planning a rally on October the 1st, and the idea is to push Peterborough councillors to fund the new climate change action plan. They have paid consultants for a new plan, but they've really done nothing about in 2016, they had a plan which they really didn't do much for. So we are asking everybody constituents in Peterborough to contact their counselors and to tell them when the plan is submitted to council, which should be in January 2025, that they should be committing funds towards it. So this is the rally. I'm hoping that people can attend. There's going to be a speaker, Stephen Hill, and possibly Diane Terrien to tell people how to talk to counselors. But this is our contribution to the Seniors for Climate plan. I urge everybody to come out to it, and also to contact your counselors. I've been trying to contact 4RG members in all the 5 wards, and if I'm hoping that people will correspond with me and start actively contacting their counselors. So please attend the rally. It'll be the numbers count, and also think about contacting your counselor, whatever ward you live in. It's really important to get behind this initiative, and counselors will not spend money unless they hear from us. So thanks very much, Marilyn.
Thank you, Richard. We have another screen share coming up, which is pretty exciting. Number 11 is our new pamphlet. Al, you're going to speak to this.
One of the major problems that we're facing when we're trying to talk to people about climate change is that the climate crisis has dropped from number 1 or 2 in people's priorities to number 5 or even 6, even though affordability and health, the 2 largest concerns of Canadians, are largely caused by climate change. Just to give a couple of examples, insurance costs in Canada rose 8% last year, largely driven by extreme weather events. Food prices are rising between 1.5% and 1.8% every year due to climate change. The average household in Canada is paying $700 more a year just because of climate issues. On the health side, thousands of Canadians die prematurely every year from breathing fumes from burning fossil fuels. As just one example, 13% of all childhood asthma is caused by gas stoves in people's kitchens, and 819 people died in BC in 2021 from heat-related deaths. So what we need to do is make people understand the connections between affordability and health and climate. So For Our Grandchildren has created the brochure that you see in front of you. Richard Peachy from our communications committee has done that in fantastic artwork to draw attention to the issues. I love his front page one with the beaver at the cash register paying an enormous amount of money for food. For readers who don't believe what is in the pamphlet, the final page has both a QR code and a web link to take the original, to take the reader to the original references for all the data. And you can see that in the lower right hand of your screen where it is. So we've already used this pamphlet successfully from the 4RG booth at the recent Peterborough Folk Festival, as Patricia has already discussed, where we gave out something like 200 of the pamphlets. We've got 2,000 printed, okay? So we have lots in reserve at this point. Very importantly, those pamphlets were a great segue into a discussion of the issues, because people are more ready to discuss affordability and health issues than they are climate change. So it's a wonderful introduction. So this raises the question of the best way to use these pamphlets. Members of the Political Action Committee have each agreed to take about 20 each to hand out to their friends and acquaintances when they get the opportunity. Linda and I have been doing this for some time, and we find people are really open to do it. So if you would like some to hand out, anybody in the audience, you can email me at, it's aslaven@trentu.ca. So aslaven@trentu.ca, and I'll arrange you to get as many of those pamphlets as you think you can use. Another option is to use them part of a deep canvassing campaign where we use them to initiate conversations at a door-to-door basis. And Linda will discuss this idea in her presentation, which is coming up on the upcoming provincial and federal elections.
Thank you, Al. Believe it or not, we're at number 12 of our 12 pack of PAC. Of course, with an eye to the future, there's more coming up, and 4RG will be represented. Volunteers are needed, please, for the Monarch Festival at Millennium Park on Saturday, September 21st. The Home Energy Expo on October 1st, and also on October 1st is the item, the demo that Richard was talking about. That's in conjunction with Green Up Clean Air Alliance. Sorry, the Home Energy Expo is in conjunction with Green Up, Clean Air Alliance, and Environmental Defense. Keep your eyes on the Take Action page because Bill 199, brought forward by NDP MPP Jennifer French, is about EV rough-ins for new builds. It's not slated for debate yet, and if we get an early provincial election, it may never come up for a debate. Last and certainly not least, it looks like there are elections or could be elections on the near horizon. Linda, this is your baby. Take it away.
Thanks, Marilyn. It's been a good night. So I just want to say to you that elections are one of the largest challenges for PAC. We're trying to sway many people's opinion in a relatively short time on a very important subject. We're probably facing a provincial election next year, along with a prescribed federal election before the end of November next year. So that gives us a lot of work to do. So how do we face the policies of Doug Ford provincially and Pierre Poilievre federally? They are both opposed to action on the climate. That's a big problem. And I'm having trouble reading my speech here, sorry. Federally, the fear is that this positive climate policies put in place by the Liberals will be overturned by Poilievre, as Ford did in his first few days in power in Ontario. So what can we learn from our last municipal elections? Mark went over some of this. I'll just quickly say that we printed 1,500 report cards on the voting records of city councillors, distributed mostly at markets, and 3,600 web cards distributed door to door that gave a web link to a survey of interviews with candidates, for a total of 5,100 pieces of literature. Now, the good thing was we had about 25 people participating in the distribution, thanks to Connie. And we also paid for small ads in the Peterborough Examiner for 2 days, giving a web link to the 4RG elections webpage. Overall, the results were disappointing. We had only about 1,000 hits on the survey website over the 5 weeks before the election, suggesting that only 1 in 5 people even bothered to check out the survey information they received. There was no obvious change in the 4RG web hits in the 2 days following the Examiner ads. The one city ward in which 4RG members dropped the largest number of web cards elected 2 very conservative members in spite of there being an excellent pro-climate challenger who worked very hard, I must add. However, 2 elections ago, here's something else we've learned. We worked with several related groups to develop a fairly long municipal pamphlet on sustainability, which included a report card and major council decisions, with a focus on a few issues that have been big and controversial. The pamphlet was distributed primarily at local weekly markets, plus some door-to-door drops. It was reasonably successful, with 4,000 hits to that website in the weeks leading up to the election. And many people said to us, "Oh, we've been looking for this information. This is great." However, perhaps the main message from this is to start with a multi-organization committee, which can bring more issues and has a larger voting base. We also, in that election, had a good person on advertising and social media, an area where we always need good assistance. That year, there were major changes in both the mayor and in several councils. So Alan has just talked to you about the new pamphlet that they're trying to redirect people's concerns about authority and health back to climate. One of the major problems we're facing is that the climate crisis has gone from number 1 or 2 in people's priorities to number 5 or 6. So we know that time was spent to develop that new brochure, which is great. However, having discussions with people on the doorstep rather than just dropping information is much more successful in changing people's opinions. This is called deep canvassing. We talked about last election. However, it's slower than a literature drop, but this deep canvassing may be necessary to change people's minds about the importance of climate change. We desperately need the general public to understand the importance of this issue before they have to vote the next 2 elections. If any of you have the time to help with a broad campaign, well, for our grandchildren, its political action committee would love you to get involved. So please contact me at lslavin100@gmail.com. And it's not difficult to do deep canvassing. We'll do some training on us. Okay, that's the end of my spiel. Sorry
Thank
about
you,
the
Linda.
speaking.
We forgot to talk about PAC. Carolyn, jump in here.
Okay, well, I think what Linda said is just really important, but a small thing is the Peterborough Environmental Advocacy Committee, or PAC, and it's a municipal government committee, Peterborough Committee, and it hears about environmental initiatives and concerns and supposedly advocates for them. It's held once a month during the school year. Now, definitely serving on this committee or being an observer would keep you more informed about what's happening in the city. And it definitely shows, either by being an observer or a participant as a committee member, that people care and that we care and are interested in watching what's unfolding. So that's important. So far, I've felt that the advocacy intensity is rather low, but I still think it's important to know about. And every couple of years they have elections for new committee members. So if anyone was interested, that would be a way to get involved. And definitely if there's anyone interested in observing it, that would be good to do. It's worth it.
Thank you. We have reached the end of our 12 pack of PAC. I can't see everybody who's on this call. I can just see those that are on my screen who already know most of this stuff, but I'm really hoping that there are some people here for whom a lot of this information will be brand new. And there are so many places to plug yourselves in small ways, medium ways, larger ways, but everyone's help is needed. This is just too big. So now I'll turn the hosting back, or the ringleader's job, back to Beth and Scott.
Well, thank you so much, Marilyn, and thank you to all the presenters. It's incredible how much people are doing in 4RG. I'm so pleased that people were able to join us tonight and share all of those different activities. So now it's an opportunity for people to ask questions, make comments. If you have any resources that you'd like to share, you can put them in the chat. If you ask a question and you're not sure who to direct it to, Marilyn will be the one who can help us with that. The only comment that I had was, well, maybe Carolyn, this is a question maybe for Carolyn, I'm not sure, that there is a link on the 4RG webpage about writing a letter. And I don't know how it aligns with the tips that you gave us today, Carolyn. That's my first question. Then my second question is there a way that we can be reminded when a letter could be written? You know, like I'm often, we all have a to-do list, and unless I get a little nudge, it's not going to come to my attention. But if I got a little nudge somehow, I'd be more willing to consider it.
There has been some discussion about when an issue comes up, creating a template. I know that Mark has created a template, which I haven't taken action on yet because things are pretty crazy in my life right now. And that's a really helpful thing. You can take it and use it exactly. You can take it, massage it, cut it, add to it, and it just makes life very easy. It makes the job very fast, and then boom, you send it away. So that's the kind of thing that I think could be put on in the take action column. Haven't discussed this with Guy yet. And of course, we could use a volunteer to staff the take action column. But that's one idea.
And that's a great idea. I often, will sign petitions online, and that's the format that they use. Here's the letter. You can just, click it and send it, but you could also personalize it. And Robert, we promised you that we could give you more time because you cut out. If you're still here.
I think the main thing I want to end with is that this show was different than others that I've been at, in that people who talked to us wanted to get into a more in-depth conversation than ever before, even to the point where they wanted to sit right in our vehicles and see how things worked. And this progression over the last 3 years, having been to these shows, illustrates to me that people are starting to take more interest and have gone beyond the curiosity stage to the maybe I'll look at this more closely stage. So it's a little bit encouraging that we're seeing some movement. There's still a lot of resistance out there to the whole thought of going electric. Totally unfounded, mind you, but there's still a lot of resistance, and it's our job to break down the myths that others are putting out there about electric transportation, and to get people more comfortable with the idea that it's an okay thing to do and an easy thing to do. So that's what we're trying to accomplish in our shows, and I think we're having some success. We just have to reach more people, that's all.
And do you think there'll be another car show next year?
Yes, there will be.
Dara's got her hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to what Linda had to say about the elections. So as you know, I'm with the Green Party, and I wanted to say that I'm now comfortable that we won't have a provincial one until the spring. But the federal situation has got me very uncomfortable, because the government could fall at any point from later this month until when that provincial election is on. So we have struck a nomination committee, and we are looking for good candidates. If anyone's interested, please let me know.
And Derek, you're with the Green Party, is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, just to make that clear. Okay, great. Yes. And how would people contact you, Dara?
I'll put my email in the chat.
Perfect, thank you.
Two totally unrelated comments. One, Patricia mentioned that she was handing out our bumper stickers fairly liberally to people, and they were loving them, and they have a great message on them. And I think I talked briefly to Guy about this. Now, for people who don't know, we are not flush with cash by any stretch. So that is why we have been charging with them. But I think from a board perspective, we need to think about whether we want to maybe try to give a few more away just to help get the message out. So that's not up for this group, but I think it's something to think about, because I was quite taken, I really was taken aback by the number, not taken aback, very positively surprised by the number of people that wanted these bumper stickers, and we're enthusiastic about them. And the more of those we have, the better. Secondly, I just want to come back to something that Scott mentioned very, very briefly. Any organization is not the most exciting part of an organization is governance and membership, but good governance is critical to the success of any organization, and we need more people or a couple of people interested in governance. So if anybody on the call or anybody who's a member of 4RG, that's the only requirement, is interested in the committee, we really do need some help on the governance committee, because we're now down to 3 of us, and governance is not, how do I put it? It's not the exciting thing to be in terms of visibility and in terms of being out there and political action. And I love putting politicians on the spot, but instead we're sitting trying to have a well-run organization. So I guess I'm just asking people to please think about maybe thinking about the governance committee, and you can get a hold of me. I don't know how to put it here, but anytime. I'm on the 4RG list on the web and everything else. So, but it is critically important. And with that, I'll pass forward to, I think Patricia has a question.
Yes. My question is, do people think there's any point to us talking to climate change deniers? As I say, I spent a lot of time, which my husband said was a waste of time, talking to a climate change denier. Is it a waste of our time, or should we talk to climate change deniers? Not that we can change their minds, but I don't know. What do you think?
I wrote that down as a question that I was going to ask. So I think it's a great question. My own personal feeling is that if you go out to challenge them, if you go to spar with them, then you've wasted your time, because as soon as you spar, then you're both, back in your heels, and you're swinging your sword, and you're not going to convince anything. But like we pointed out in one of our earlier meets where we talked about how to talk to climate deniers, basically. We talked about finding those points that we have in common. Like it's, you know, I had a friend the other day that said that we was talking about climate and politics and said they concluded we have absolutely nothing in common. And I refute that, because everybody agrees that we want to look after our kids. Everybody wants to look after, you know, fish and wildlife. Everybody wants to have
Health.
good health. Like there's all kinds of things that we agree on.
Mhm.
And so you start with that, and you know, you give your opinion, they give yours, and as long as you keep it civil and you see each other's point of view, and you acknowledge what they're saying, I think that's key. If you acknowledge what deniers are saying in terms of what their concerns are, and then try to ease those concerns, I think you've made some progress.
Mhm.
But butting heads with somebody on the street is pointless, I would think. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Patricia, it's Jane. I have found that it's a waste of time. No matter how nicely I put it or talk, it's a waste of time with some people because they're not open-minded. If they're open-minded enough to listen, then it's worth your while. And I need to go. So thanks for a good meeting.
And I agree with that. If they're not opening to sharing a conversation, then there's no point.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you gotta really go by
Linda
that.
has a question.
Just a comment for Richard Peachy. The grannies would love to perform on October the 1st.
The Raging Grannies would love to perform on October the 1st with the band event, the seniors event.
Okay, I think
Okay,
Richard
I'll-
stepped away, but we can email him. Actually, just to extend our gratitude to Marilyn. When we, you know, watched the 2 climate collaboration meetings that happened in the spring, and I just thought, oh, there's PAC is, the Political Action Committee is doing so much. And I reached out to Marilyn and just said, like, what do you think? And she was all on board. And like, basically this whole thing is, you know, Marilyn's organization. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who made the effort to be here and follow the orders of Marilyn to keep our timeline tight.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure herding cats.